In this fortnight's episode, I say goodbye to the Libertarian Party of Arkansas. What's in the news? A new Ancap app to help you record police encounters. Herding cats on LPEX and PorcFest. And Muh Roads talking about the USPS.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week, coming to you from Lava HQ, flowing from the state that is more than half covered by forest land, and the other half is covered by churches and liquor stores. This is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the liberty movement needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at the Lava Flow Pod. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2015, and this is episode 11. The End of an Error edition. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. This will be my last podcast while I am a leader in the Libertarian Party of Arkansas for quite some time, if not forever. My wife and I have spent nearly a decade working our asses off for the LPAR, and we have made some amazing progress. When I started with this party, it was dead. We had no membership program at all, no money, and practically no leadership. When I say no leadership, I am not kidding. We had a state chair who had spent the previous decade running everyone out of the party that he could and pissing everybody off. We had a treasurer who was facing serious federal charges for serious crimes that he committed as an attorney, which he was later found guilty of and went to prison for and was subsequently disbarred. And we had a couple of district reps who were barely active at all. The first meeting I went to for the LPAR had 4 people in attendance: myself, my wife, the current 1st District rep, and the chairman of the state party. A few months later, the second meeting that I went to also only had 4 people in attendance. I knew this had to change. If I was going to be a part of this, it had to grow, or I was done. I got to work pretty quickly, working with the only highly active member of the leadership who was not running people off in droves, and we decided to change things. The 1st District rep position soon opened up, which, since I already told you about our paltry attendance at meetings, should be no surprise. I was given that position on the state executive committee, and I took a district that had 3 people coming to meetings to a group that had nearly 20 regularly in just a short period of time. We then had an issue that had to be resolved if there was ever going to be a lasting LPAR, and that was the chair. The current chair had no interest in moving the party forward at all, but he had also no interest in stepping down to let others who wanted to do the job properly actually do it. It came to a head after a national convention where he publicly and privately made the LPAR look shameful due to several of his actions. When we returned home from that convention, I was hell-bent on having him removed one way or another. I had discussions with all of the other members of the LPAR executive committee, and we decided that it was either going to be him or us. All of us, as a group, told the former chair that either he resigned or we all resigned. Finally, he saw that there was no choice and resigned. Now, I had a specific person in mind for the LPAR chair. He was a successful businessman who was active with the party and a member of the executive committee. I practically begged him to take this position, but he refused. So I was then asked by a couple of members to take the helm, and I begrudgingly accepted, knowing that I had absolutely no experience for that position. I still think that they may have made a major error in asking me to do this. However, in hindsight, having no experience was perhaps the very best thing that I could have had for that position. When people told me that things couldn't be done, or that things had never been done that way, I didn't care, because I didn't have the experience telling me that they were right. I did things anyway, and more often than not, they were successful. And most of that was probably luck. When I took over as chair, I had 3 goals that I knew that we had to achieve if the party were going to survive and thrive. The first was full ballot access. The LPAR had never been able to run a candidate for any office other than president. If we were going to be a political party, we had to run political candidates for office and win. Less than a year after I took the chair, the LPAR had full ballot access for the first time in history. That next year, we ran candidates in 17 races and won 2, a nonpartisan alderman and a partisan constable. 2 years later, we ran candidates in 28 races and won 3, a nonpartisan mayor and alderman and a partisan constable. We also increased the number of votes for LPAR candidates from just under 100,000 to more than 330,000 in just 2 years, an increase of 250%. More importantly, we now have a couple of hundred registered libertarians in the state, something we never had before in the state of Arkansas, and this number is growing constantly. My second goal as chair was to grow our membership, which was not hard since we had no membership to speak of. Just prior to becoming chair, I had implemented the state membership program on our website. As a chair, I took that program and ran with it, bringing in more members than the state party had likely ever seen, and it has only continued to grow. The third goal that I had was to raise funds. When I took over as chair and took control of the finances, we had about $100 to our name. Since then, we have paid for petitioning a total of 3 times at a cost of around $30,000 each time, not to mention much of the other money that we used for other events and state conventions. Last year's state convention was the largest the state had ever seen. It was a 3-day event with over 100 people in attendance. Now, I would be an idiot to think that I did all of this myself, because it is absolutely not true. I lit a torch that others followed, some even more vigorously than I did. I could not have done any of this without the hard work and support of my wife and the current chairman of the LPAR, Jessica Paxton. I also had many excellent members of the executive committee over the years who helped tremendously. Although, admittedly, there were also many members of that body who were comfortable just holding a seat and doing nothing as well. There were also countless volunteers who I cannot even begin to count, much less name. You know who you are, and I am grateful for each and every one of you. As I said, I can't take credit for all the work that brought the LPAR to where it is today, but I do take credit for lighting that torch. Now, if I had not come along, it's very, very possible that someone else may have stepped up and lit that torch. But it's also possible that the LPAR could have died out completely. Either way, I am glad that I came along and helped where and when I could. 2 years ago, I stepped down as chair and took the position of secretary, primarily because it was an area in the party that needed the most help. Our records were a mess, we had no idea where our membership really stood, and we had no history being kept to speak of. So after 2 years of being the secretary, I feel that our records are finally intact and in good enough shape to pass on to someone else. Jessica is also not running for re-election for the chair. We are both taking some much-needed time for ourselves, our family, and our sanity. Since I am a lifetime member of the LPAR, I will always remain a member, but I need to let other, more capable hands take over and propel this party further than Jess and I ever could. I will always look fondly on my time with the leadership of the LPAR and the hard work and many accomplishments that came from me lighting that torch. I will always be very proud of what I helped reignite. I will always be thankful for the friends and family that I made with the LPAR and the many, many memories that I will have forever. I must be honest and say that I have high hopes and serious worries about the future of the LPAR. I know how fragile what we've built is, and I know how easy it is to let that fire burn out. I hope that the new leadership team will take the torch that Jess and I hand over and use it to build a bonfire in the state of Arkansas that has never been seen before. I want my time with the party to be relegated to footnotes while the party grows the embers that were created in these footnotes to massive flames. My work for true liberty will not die until the day that I take my last breath, even though my time with the LPAR is ending. This is a huge part of my life that I'm leaving behind, but it is all for the best, not only for our family, but also for the LPAR. I will now be able to concentrate on other endeavors within the larger liberty movement, such as the Lava Flow podcast. I'll also be able to spend more time with my family and working hard to raise a second generation of libertarian Paxtons. I will spend every day of the rest of my life carving out as much liberty as I can for myself and others. I hope each and every one of you listening to this podcast does the exact same thing. As Thomas Jefferson said to James Madison in 1787, I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In, of course it's property news, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit has ruled that Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act never authorized the National Security Agency's collection of all Americans' phone calling records. The government tried to argue that there is no offense until the data is searched. However, as the court said, the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Data is a thing that can be owned, and when the government takes someone's data, it is seized. This is a clear win for civil liberties in this country, and this is a clear vindication for Edward Snowden. The ruling comes as Congress faces a June 1st deadline to renew the part of the Patriot Act that authorizes the NSA's bulk data surveillance. We can only hope that they will do the right thing, but I for one will not be holding my breath. In the government can't do anything right news, the U.S. Postal Service posted a net operating loss of $1.5 billion in the first quarter of 2015. In a time when UPS and FedEx are seeing double-digit profits, the only reason this could happen is that it's being run by a bunch of bureaucrats instead of businessmen who have the motive of profit to attend to. And of course, this $1.5 billion is not being absorbed by shareholders, as would be the case with FedEx or UPS, but by you and I, the taxpayer. Now, nearly 5 years ago, I wrote an article about the USPS for a series of articles that I called the Libertarian Alternative for the Libertarian Party of Arkansas. I'm going to use that article for a new edition of my Muh Roads segment coming up later in this episode. In I Must Be a Prophet news, way back in episode 9, which you can find at thelavaflow.com/9, I made the case that Edward Snowden needed a statue in honor of him. As if on cue, in Berlin there now stand statues of Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, and Chelsea Manning, which were unveiled on May 1st. Entitled Anything to Say, the sculptures encourage supporters to stand up for freedom of speech and information. The artist behind the work, Italian sculptor David Dormino, explains that he wanted to, quote, represent 3 contemporary heroes who have lost their freedom for the truth. Each of the 3 statues stands on a chair, with a 4th chair standing empty next to them, which is there to encourage all of us to stand up for freedom of speech and freedom of information, just as the 3 objects of this piece have done. The statues will begin a world tour soon, so be on the lookout for a location near you. In Not in My Backyard news, in response to citizens' complaints, the City Council in Austin, Texas has begun the task of taking on, quote, the smell of barbecue and a proposal to control it, end quote. Now, Austin is known for its barbecue, even if it is beef barbecue and not pork, like barbecue's meant to be. But many of the city's best-known barbecue joints are saying that this will force them to either close their doors or move out of town entirely. Owner Aaron Franklin of Franklin Barbecue widely considered to be Austin's best, said it would destroy Austin barbecue as we know it. The resolution's stated purpose is to, quote, mitigate the effects of smoke emissions from restaurants and mobile food vendors near residentially zoned areas, end quote. Now, as a homeowner, I do believe that anyone who has a legitimate grievance against odor from a nearby restaurant should absolutely have the ability to do something about it. If a Korean restaurant moved next door to my home and invaded my home and property with smells of kimchi day in and day out, I should absolutely have the right to sue the restaurant for olfactory pollution or some sort of private nuisance if the restaurant did not want to fix itself on its own. But to have a blanket citywide law to stop this sort of thing is just asinine and typical of statists. Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
Ancap Apps.
On this show, I've spoken several times on the importance of recording every single interaction that you have with police officers. And we've talked about a few apps in the past that do that. But there is a new one out that just hit the market, and it's free. The ACLU in California released this free smartphone app that allows people to send cell phone videos of police encounters to the ACLU automatically. And the ACLU will preserve the video footage, even if the cops seize the phone and delete the video or destroy the phone. The app, called Mobile Justice CA, works for both iPhone and Android users. It's available at Apple's App Store and at Google Play, and links will be in the show notes for this episode at thelavaflow.com/11. The app features a large record button in the middle of the screen. When it's pressed, the video is recorded on the phone, and a duplicate copy is transmitted simultaneously to the ACLU servers. When the stop button is pressed, a report screen appears, where information about the location of the incident and the people involved can also be transmitted automatically to the ACLU. The video and the information are treated as a request for legal assistance and reviewed by staff members. No action is taken by the ACLU, however, unless an explicit request is made, and the reports are treated as confidential and privileged legal communications. The videos, however, may be shared by the ACLU with the news media, community organizations, or the general public to help call attention to police abuse. The app is available in English and Spanish. It also includes a Know Your Rights page. Quote, people who historically have had very little power in the face of law enforcement now have this tool to reclaim their power and dignity, said Patrice Cullors, director of the Truth and Reinvestment Campaign at the Ella Baker Center, which is working with the ACLU of California to support the launch of the Mobile Justice CA app. Quote, our vision is that this app will ultimately help community members connect and organize to respond to incidents of law enforcement violence and then share their experiences and knowledge with others. The Mobile Justice CA app complies with California law. ACLU affiliates in other states have developed other versions for use in those states. Residents of New York should use the Stop and Frisk Watch app. In New Jersey, it's the Police Tape app. In Oregon and Missouri, it's the Mobile Justice app. These work in different ways. With the New York app, shaking the phone stops the filming. The New Jersey app does not transmit the video automatically. The user must choose to send it to the ACLU NJ for backup storage. Not all of them are available on all platforms, and not all are available in Spanish as the California app is. However, video submitted from anywhere via the California app will be stored and available to those who submitted it.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
There are two big libertarian events coming up in the next couple of months that I want to talk about. On the left side of the country, the Libertarian Political Expo will be held in Las Vegas on May 28th through the 31st. I've mentioned this one before in this segment, but since it's coming up soon, I wanted to remind everyone. They will be having a ton of speakers, ranging from several Nevada politicians to Tony Stiles of the Tony Stiles Show and Christina Tobin, founder and chair of Free and Equal Elections. They will also be having the conventions of both the California and Nevada Libertarian Party during this event, as well as the yearly meeting of the Libertarian State Leadership Alliance. There will also be lots of free workshops and training from American Majority and Turning Point USA. General admission to the event is $249 for all 4 days and all events, with students getting in for $125. On the right side of the country will be the 12th annual PorcFest. This week-long event will be from June 21st to 28th in Lancaster, New Hampshire. The Porcupine Freedom Festival is an annual liberty camping event organized by the Free State Project. The $45 and $65 early bird tickets are gone, but there are still some tickets available between $75 and $100, so get yours before they're gone. Kids under 17 are free with an adult ticket purchase. You can also camp on-site, stay in a cabin on-site, or get a hotel room either on-site or very close nearby. Most libertarian events will have you sitting in convention halls all day listening to people speak on many topics, and that's great and all, don't get me wrong, but PorcFest is different. As they say on their website, PorcFest is a week-long celebration of liberty at Rogers Campground in northern New Hampshire. Over 1,500 people are expected to attend this unique camping event, which includes activities for all ages. Campfires, panel discussions, presentations, movies, live talk shows, dancing, singing, music, food, parties, all around liberty-loving good times and more are to be found at the most exciting liberty event of the year. PorcFest is a showcase of some of New Hampshire's finest people and offerings in the scenic view of the White Mountains. Take the entire family along. There are plenty of children and teenagers who enjoy the festival with their families, and they have lots of activities set up for the kids. If you get a chance, you really should stop by the schedule page at porcfest.com/schedule and see what's in store. I mean, they have family movie nights and bonfires, yoga and meditation. They have something for everybody. They have music events, activism events, speakers, art events, ham radio, board games, Zumba, first aid and CPR classes, tons of media events with all kinds of libertarian media personalities, pool parties, food contests, comedy night, a rave for the kids, and tons of other events. I mean, there is not a dull moment to be had at PorcFest. As much as I would love to go to this event, it is just not feasible for me this year. It's a 22-hour drive up there, and I just can't do that this year. But I am already planning to take the entire family to PorcFest 14 next year. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
I wrote this original article back in November of 2010 for a series of articles that were posted on the Libertarian Party of Arkansas's webpage. The series was called The Libertarian Alternative, where I took a few public sector products and showed how they could work in a society free from government. One of these articles was on the U.S. Postal Service, which fits nicely here since they are in the news yet again for failing spectacularly. Here is that article, updated with stats from today. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution says, the Congress shall have power to establish post offices and post roads. So there you go. It's cut and dry. The Constitution says it. So that's the end of the story. Article done. Or is it? Does this congressional power say anything about Congress or the federal government having a complete monopoly control over postal mail? Does it say anything about a private citizen not competing with this service? Of course not. But the federal government sure acts like it says that. Just ask Lysander Spooner. More on him in a bit. But how could we possibly trust someone other than the federal government to handle such a precious commodity as mail? Well, to begin with, it seems like we read an article of some mailman hoarding mail every few weeks. In Raleigh, North Carolina, authorities found enough mail to fill 3/4 of a semi-trailer in the residence and buried in the yard of mailman Stephen M. Paget. Jill Hull hoarded 9,000 pieces of mail in Fowlerville, Florida. David Blauser kept 13,000 pieces of mail in Philadelphia. 20,000 in Detroit for James Stempnick in 2009, and another 20,000 by a different carrier in Philadelphia in May of 2010. These are just a few of the many stories of this happening. Who could possibly provide a better service experience than the government? In early 2007, the U.S. Postal Service did some research and was surprised to find that customers of the nation's 37,000 post offices were not happy about wait times in line. In response, the post office came up with a brilliant idea, something that could only come from the federal government. They removed the clocks from all 37,000 post offices. Stephen Seawoster, a Postal Service spokesman, said, apparently with a straight face, quote, "We want people to focus on postal service and not the clock. Also gone are the vinyl stickers promising service in 5 minutes or less." Seawoster said that this was part of a discontinued service program. Don't you all feel better about those long wait times now? But the Postal Service is an income generator for the government, right? Well, no. As we talked about in the What's in the News segment above. In the fiscal year of 2014, the Postal Service lost $5.5 billion. And that is the 8th year in a row of major loss. This is even with all the special benefits it gets, like not having to pay taxes, borrowing money at a heavily discounted rate, and the ability to take private property under eminent domain. FedEx, by contrast, made profits of $2.08 billion in the fiscal year ending May 2014, up 34% from the previous year. Comparing these two is not really fair, since FedEx cannot directly compete with USPS for first-class mail, but it is as close of a comparison as we can have in today's environment. It's also not fair in the fact that FedEx must make a profit, or its shareholders will leave in droves and its board of directors will make tough changes and could possibly decide to close them down. USPS doesn't have to worry about this. If it loses money, it has the taxpayer, you and me, to prop it up, which it has done repeatedly. So, since we've seen that the USPS does not provide a cost-effective, efficient, profitable service, what would mail service look like in a libertarian alternative? For most situations, we can really only speculate about how things would look in a libertarian society. In the case with mail service, we only have to look back in our own American history to find some answers. In 1844, it cost 18.75 cents to send a half-ounce letter between 150 and 400 miles using the USPS. Over 400 miles, it was 25 cents. A letter sent from Boston to Albany, New York, written on a 1/4 ounce sheet of paper and carried by the Western Railroad, cost 2/3 as much as the freight charge for carrying a barrel of flour the same distance. Lysander Spooner began the American Letter Mail Company in 1844 to directly compete with the USPS. His rate began at 6.25 cents per half ounce with no weight limit. Or you could buy a bulk of 20 stamps for $1, which reduced this rate to 5 cents per half ounce. He opened offices in New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Boston, and he had daily runs between these cities and 2 runs a day between New York and Philadelphia. The post office had an almost immediate effect on its revenue because of the American Letter Mail Company. When Washington began to see this, they began filing suit against Spooner. Congress told railroad heads that if they didn't refuse passage to private letter carriers, they would not be allowed to carry government mail. This still didn't daunt Spooner. He fought in court and won some major legal victories. In March of 1845, the Postmaster General, after pleading to Congress, lowered prices dramatically. The price was lowered from 18.75 cents to 5 cents. Mr. Spooner countered and lowered his rates as well, as you would expect in a free market with competition. In 1851, Congress lowered their rates again, this time to 3 cents for delivery anywhere in the country. They were obviously feeling the pressure. They also enacted a law to protect the government's monopoly on the distribution of mail. The law forced Spooner to disband his American Letter Mail Company. His experiment of competition against the government had worked so well, in fact, that the post office didn't raise rates past 3 cents until over 100 years later, in 1958, when it was raised to 4 cents. After raising their rates only 1 cent from 1851 to 1958, 108 years, the prices have now risen 1,433% from 1958 to 2010, with no end in sight. Isn't it about time for another Lysander Spooner? Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my bodacious bride, Jessica, for her help with this show, and Sheltered Life for allowing me to use their music. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and information that has been on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/11. I've received a few more iTunes reviews recently. A.R. Nate says, I'm really enjoying the Lava Flow, as Mr. Paxton dissects relevant issues from an educated libertarian point of view, examining pressing societal issues in America from the underserved liberty point of view. Lava Flow is providing listeners valuable insights and views currently lacking in mainstream media outlets. A podcast glutton says, I'm finding myself looking forward to this podcast every week. It's well edited and produced. The ideas and opinions are well reasoned and based firmly in libertarian principles. This is a good one. Thank you so much, guys. I could not keep doing this without the encouragement from folks like you. Thank you again. And most importantly, if you like what this show gives you and you want more of it, and to keep this show ad-free, exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode using Patreon. There are monthly costs associated with doing this show, and I need additional equipment to continue making this show better for you every episode. If you don't want to use Federal Reserve notes, then donate with Bitcoin also at thelavaflow.com/support. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.